Problematik ist ganz klar. Die Sicherheitselemente der Fahrzeuge treffen sich nicht gut, ragen nach vorne aus dem Fahrzeug, verfehlen einander und die Knautschzone kann ihre Wirkung nicht voll entfalten. Die Unfallschwere ist daher deutlich höher, als sie eigentlich sein müsste.
Mit dem kleinen Gerät.
Die Türen ließen sich nicht mehr oder nur sehr schwer öffnen.
Die tragenden Strukturen dieser Fahrzeuge, das heißt die Längs- und Querträger, befinden sich auf unterschiedlichen Höhen. Der Fiesta fährt unter der Struktur des Peugeot hindurch. Die Fahrzeuge fahren weit ineinander, die Fahrgastzellen werden beim Aufprall überlastet. Die Forderung des ADAC ist, dass die Längsträger, die oft vorne wie eine Lanze aus dem Fahrzeug herausstehen, dass die mit einem stabilen Querverbund verbunden werden. Der Querverbund muss auch hoch genug sein, um unterschiedliche Fahrzeughöhen ausgleichen zu können. Nur so ist sichergestellt, dass die Energie des Aufpralls in der Knautschzone abgebaut wird und die Insassen so wenig wie möglich verletzt werden.
Just how tough is a 1995 Ford Crown Victoria? Well, unfortunately, this past Tuesday, March 12, 2013, I had the chance to find out. In the early morning commute on a rainy day to work, I got hit in the passenger side by a rather large tow truck, and it unfortunately ended up totaling the car. And what happened was I was attempting to change lanes, and looked over, made sure it was clear, and when I made the maneuver, the truck came out of nowhere and hit me in the side. And when it did that, it pushed the car toward the left, sort of back in that lane, and forced me into the other car that was directly in front of me. So it messed up the driver's side as well too. Hit right here in the wheel well area on the front fender. And the force of the impact was quite severe. This was a major accident. This car is basically what you're seeing right here is what it looked like the day of the accident. Nothing has been done to it. You can still see the parking light from the truck that hit me, jammed in the windshield area. And of course all of the glass that came from the passenger side window. It basically was like an explosion when that happened. The truck that hit me was a 2009 Chevy C2500 Duramax diesel flatbed tow truck, ironically. And just like with the F-250, you know, every car has a story to tell. That was involved in a very minor accident, and I think I've pointed that out in the video I've made of that truck. Still in very good condition, but when you buy a used car, you always want to try to ascertain the accident history if you can. And so being involved in an accident, I've kind of done that with this car to kind of piece together the chain of events that happened. And I've got pictures as well. But basically, being a tow truck, it's got the large lug nuts on the outside of the wheels. And what happened is they grabbed this door area right here first, and then got into where the crack is between the rear door and the front door, and peeled the skin off on that driver's side door. And then at the same time, the bumper of the truck smashed everything in. You can get a concept for how severe the impact was looking at the side of the car. You can see just how pushed in that door really is, as well as the B-pillar. And the damage to the B-pillar area, you got the A-pillar, B-pillar, and C-pillar. That's basically what ended up totaling the car, because the crash energy had extended far beyond just the driver's door and started to get into more robust areas of the body. Here you can see the explosion basically of the side glass going all over the place, including my face. And that's the only injury I really had. My neck was stiff a little bit, and so was my back, but I have a couple of scratches on my face, but otherwise I'm okay. And you can see the B-pillar now is making full contact with the passenger seat. It's pushed in that much. You can't even get the seatbelt out. That's a good 3 inches right there. And also complicating matters because this door is integrated into the side of the car. It'd be very difficult to straighten all that back out again and get a good tight seal. Of course, the door here is jammed shut and will not open. And when that B-pillar was pushed inward, it kind of pushed in and pulled the rear door forward, and so that door is not opening anymore. So both of these two doors are jammed shut, but most of the damage appears to be just on the body of the car. If we look at this big thick frame, which I'm not sure you can tell, it's pretty straight and true, not bent at all. But when you go outward toward the body, that's where all the damage is. So we'll go over here to the right side. Now the crash continued on to the fender area as well too, and damaged some parts of the body that's behind it, or where the firewall area would be, causing the hood panel to raise up slightly. I've actually not opened up the hood on this car because I've been too afraid the hood won't shut. I may end up doing that in the video, I'm not for sure yet. Front of the car is still okay, but I've got some damage here on the bumper now where I made contact with that other car. Of course, the parking light doesn't exist anymore. And this impact area here pushed out the fender shroud, so it makes contact with the tire every now and then when you make a sharp left-hand turn, or even a moderate left-hand turn. And the crash energy not only damaged the fender here, but it also flexed the body enough to get into the windshield a little bit. So even though that metal may have flexed and returned back to its normal position, it's essentially weakened. The more you bend metal back and forth, the weaker it gets. So these panels don't line up anymore. This fender may have gone up and settled back down during the crash. And now there's too much interference between the driver door and the front fender. So the driver door doesn't open enough. That's about as far as you can go without tearing into that fender. Certainly doesn't open up enough to let you inside. So the left rear door is the only door that works. And getting more into the passenger door, you can see how they're made. They're basically two pieces of metal crimped together, and that crimp was destroyed as the two pieces were separated by the force of the impact. This is the power door lock actuator motor, what's left of it. You can see the big, strong, solid beam inside the door that most cars have these days. Of course, all the glass is gone. And as further evidence of the body movement, even on the interior, even though the dashboard looks okay, the glove box has a lot of interference. So something can look okay, but actually have a lot of hidden damage, and that's pretty much why the car is totaled. You just never know. It might look okay on the surface, you know, just go to the junkyard and get a couple of doors and a fender and put it back on the road, but there might be a lot more damage than you realize once you start getting into it. However, the drivetrain is rock solid, frame is rock solid. I actually drove the car home. Looks like the camber on that tire is still where it should be. A lot of times in a crash like that, the tire would be leaning inward if you had frame damage. Same thing on the driver's side. But what ended up happening was, even though this car looks pretty bad now, this car, I was able to drive it home on the interstate, 70 miles an hour, no problem. The tow truck is the one that had to be towed. Of course, with that said, the tow truck is not totaled, and the Crown Victoria is. But nonetheless, that just goes to show you the ruggedness of these old Crown Victorias. And I've got some pictures to show. As with any accident, what you want to do is take pictures immediately so you can get an idea of the position of the cars and what happened. So there's my car, and I pushed this other car forward and ran into the backside of him with the left front fender of my car. And of course you can tell they got their raincoats on. It was pretty nasty that day. It was wet. And here's a close-up of the other car. Pretty moderate damage. It's definitely repairable. It's a 2006 Mercury Milan. He'll get that car back on the road with no problem. And there's the big tow truck that did the deed. Looks pretty messed up. I think I mentioned before it was a C5500 flatbed. You can see the bumper pushed all the way in past the left front tire. He can't make a right-hand turn, and that's why he had to get towed away. And the fiberglass hood shroud and everything is destroyed. That's pretty delicate material anyway, so that's designed to give away on impact. There's a close-up of the damage. Headlight cluster would have been right in there. It's now lying on the ground where this guy is hooking up the tow chains. And it got a little bit into the body. Here's the hood. There's a model of the truck. The hood basically flips forward like that, and you have the rest of the body. You got some damage there. So, very, very large, heavy truck hit this car, and even then, this car did its job, protected me, and actually got me down the road. The only problem I had that I couldn't move the car immediately after the wreck was the inertia cutoff switch engaged for the fuel pump, and I closed the trunk unfortunately, but there's a switch with a red button on it located right up in there farther down that you just push back down and you can start the car again. So these cars, I've got to say, I've always liked the larger cars for their safety, and I've always read how safe they were, but I never really ever had the experience, personal experience, to see just how safe they were in an accident. And in some ways it's actually kind of interesting that this happened and I can learn from it. You know, it's a very unfortunate circumstance because this was my grandfather's car. I just bought it in November. I've changed all the fluids and lubricants and engine coolant and everything else, and I've made videos of that you guys can watch. This of course will be the last video of this Crown Victoria. It only has 13,000 miles on it, unfortunately. It was a cream puff. It wasn't in perfect shape. I had a few what I like to call old man dents where he would hit the side of the garage or hit posts and parking lots near banks and stuff like that, so it wasn't perfect, but it was still a great car, and I feel very bad that just after having it for such a short time that I had an accident with it. It's really the first at-fault accident I've ever had my whole life, so I feel pretty bad about that. But I drive about 1,200 miles a month, and just from a statistical perspective, the more you drive, the more likely you are to get into an accident, so it's bound to happen eventually. But it's just a car. It's just an organized piece of metal, basically. You know, it's sad that it happened, but cars can always be replaced. It will live on in pieces. What I'm going to try to do, since this is a Crown Victoria, I'm kind of fortunate. A lot of taxi cab companies still use Crown Victorias, and I think what I'll do, since the car is drivable, is try to contact some taxi cab companies and see if they'd be interested in purchasing the entire car for parts. It's got a nice 4.6 liter V8 engine, an AODE transmission, an 8.8 rear end, all synthetic lubricants. The engine's in great shape. It's drivable. It's a crime really to have a wreck like that, but it'd be more of a crime to have a nice 4.6 liter sitting in the junkyard rotting away. Just be a complete waste. If somebody else can use some of these parts, that'd be the best scenario. And really, the frame and drivetrain and everything was the best part of the car. The body was kind of so-so. You've got scratches on the top of the roof there where the garage door came down and hit it and he didn't know about it. Stuff like that. So it wasn't pristine, but the main reason I got the car was the ultra low mileage, and it's been a great one. So I figured I'd make a video about it one last time, just to kind of preemptively answer any questions anybody would have, like, well, gee, what happened to the Crown Victoria? Why don't you show that anymore? Well, this is the reason why. I'm not going to be able to. It's been totaled. But I'm impressed with how tough this car is. It just amazes me that you can have an accident that bad with a vehicle that large and get back into the car, get on the interstate, and drive it home. In fact, it drives so well, the alignment's not even messed up.
Toyota Sienna did better overall in Insurance Institute crash tests than any other vehicle tested, ever.